Uh, what can I not talk about? That's the main thing. You know, you can't. It's not all one person thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for years, and I had many anxiety and panic attacks because of it. You don't want to go through that.
Welcome to Season 2 of Brawlhalla Origins. This season's lineup is packed with awesome guests from various backgrounds in the Brawlhalla community. Join our VIP list by signing up at season2.brawlhallaorigins.com to get early access to each episode, special clips, giveaways, and behind-the-scenes updates. Today's guest is Ajmorr2000. He's a streamer and tournament organizer of one of the biggest communities in Brawlhalla, Moose Wars.
Right? So how do you feel about going as player green in winner's quarters? Okay.
Brawlhalla Origins is presented by Brawl Academy. Brawl Academy's mission is to provide the best educational content for improving at Brawlhalla to support competition long-term by bringing in and leveling up new talent. Learn more at brawlacademy.com. Brawlhalla Origins Season 2 is sponsored by SIB Esports. Go support them and follow what they do over at esportssib.com.
Welcome to Brawlhalla Origins. Ajmorr, how's it going, man? How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic there, Atrophius. How you doing there, boss?
Good. So the point of the show is to talk to people about their origins in Brawlhalla and get a feel for where you came from, how you got started in the community, how you kind of grew into where you are today. So let's kind of take things way back and start with our first usual question. How did you find Brawlhalla?
So back in, 2015 realistically, I just played Brawlhalla with friends. It was just a casual thing. I had a friend named Big Mo Live that introduced me into the game, another content creator back then when I first got into content creation. And I'm like, okay, it'd be cool. And then going into 2017, 2018, I was a Terraria streamer. I was doing pretty well with that, but I wasn't seeing any real growth. And I wanted to grow in a game and build a community, build myself in a community that meant something, you know, outside of just being a Terraria server hoster and then running all that. And I found Brawl and I started doing that. And that's kind of how it blew up from there.
So you started streaming Brawl originally, right? So how did that whole process kind of start for you? Was it just like playing games with viewers? Did you do very much like competitive play, or was it just kind of casual games, like a casual game to stream?
So it was more of a games with viewers thing in the beginning. So this is like 2018. This is before there's a whole lot of main streamers outside of Crocky, right? That were in Brawlhalla really streaming it consistently. Of course, Crocky was the main guy back then, but I decided to do games with viewers. Did that for a little bit, and that's kind of how I grew my small community base, and that's how I was able to be. I used to average like roughly 30 to 60 viewers with just content creation. But that's what I remember. Those were the days when Crocky would come in and he would be the main streamer back then, and then I would be second guy up there and all that stuff.
Nice. Okay, so I think most people know you best from Moose Wars and that series of tournaments that you are kind of the main TO and you kind of organize. Can you tell me a little bit about how Moose Wars got started? What was kind of the origination there? Like, what inspired you to start running these tournaments?
Yeah, so when I was a content creator, I was doing crew battles for a while, right? So I was running crew battles back then, and then crew battles started being done by everyone. So I was like, okay, well, I need some sort of avenue to kind of keep myself a little bit more unique within the community, but also where I'm not doing the same stuff over and over again. It kind of gets boring and redundant. So I decided to go ahead and say, you know what, let's go ahead and run community events. There's really none in North America. Brawl League and SSL were going crazy in their own regions. But there really wasn't, Brawl League was in NA, but they were more focused on EU than they were NA. So I was like, okay, let me try to do some NA community events, see how it would be, just as like a streamer thing. Really nothing out there. And from there, I started doing the smaller tournaments on my own on Challenge for a while. And then it kind of turned into Maple Series, which is what we did for Challenge and all that. And then from there, we turned it into Moose Wars on Star GG.
Nice. So what's the progression of sort of like of the relationship kind of been like between you and not just the pro community, but also kind of like BMG as well? Because now I know that Moose Wars is one of the like BCTI tournaments at this point. Like it's kind of a officially sponsored community tournament by Brawlhalla, right?
Yeah. So with Brawlhalla, me, SSL, and Brawl League are the main 3 TOs for each region. So we are under BCTI, but we're on our own level per se.
Okay.
We have our own individually dealt contracts. We're just grouped under tier 1 just because we're the top guys out there. So when it came down to my relationship with the pros and with the community, I met a lot of these guys as community members. So back in 2019, I had Luna in my events back then. I started knowing him from one of these small streamer events. I started knowing him for Moose Wars and whatever else. And a lot of these pros in North America now started in Moose Wars and led up into official. So most top 32 players played in the Moose Wars to improve. It was the main source of improvement to them. And that was why we decided to continue doing these events. So from then, I mean, I pretty much know is most of the top 32 players that played in the Moose Wars prior to going into officials. And then when it comes down to my relationship with Brawlhalla, I started doing these smaller events. I was funding them myself for like a good year before I didn't really want to go in the competitive side because I liked the content creator side a lot more. I kind of felt that I was slowing down with content creation in the sense of I wasn't going to be able to upkeep the content side rather than the tournament side. So I was like, okay, let me go ahead and go into just writing them competitively for the pro players, but also my community, and try to make it like a merge of the two where the community is enjoying themselves as much as the pros are. Because usually most competitive events is more for like advertising those pros, giving them storylines. That's good. That's the main focus a tournament should have. But the community side is the main focus that no one really focuses on. Kind of what I really pushed on going into Moose Wars, and that's why we've grown so big with that. But yeah, so we did that for a bit until 2019. BMG reached out to me, interested in working with me for sponsoring some of my events. This was before BCTI. So I was the only TO before BCTI. It was only like a week. A week before BCTI was introduced, I had my own agreement with BMG, and then BCI was introduced for the other smaller TOs in the scene, to basically be like, hey, let's go ahead and work something together and see what we can do. But that's kind of how that all worked out. It slowly built up to me doing some more major events and prize pools raising, etc.
Gotcha. Can you tell me a little bit more about sort of like your engagement on the community side? So like you said that kind of the Moose Wars has kind of been the focus of like kind of building up and engaging sort of like that community. Can you tell me a little bit more about like how that tends to work for you and like what your focus is there, and what kind of benefits you think that plays for the overall community itself?
Yeah. So I like to call myself the community manager for Moose Wars, or the big brother for Brawl. Main reason being is I know most of these players pretty well. They started in Moose Wars. I've had conversations with them. I'm going to say most, not all, of course. But when it comes down to these guys, I mean, I know these guys pretty well. We joke around DMs, so it could work in the time depending on the player. I'll have players come up, try to sign up late, and it's like, hey, can you add me to a bracket? And we'll just go back and forth as like a joke in DMs. Right? So, I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, yeah, it can be interesting sometimes for sure. But yeah, so I mean, yeah.
Can you I'm sure you've probably got some pretty interesting memories or stories of things that have happened across like all of the different events that
Yep.
you've run. If there was like if there was like one specific Moose Wars event that if you wanted someone in the community who is maybe new to watching competitive Brawlhalla or something like that to watch, do you have one in mind that you would say, hey, this is the one that you need to go see?
Um, I mean, some of our major ones would be like Man of War was a huge one for Moose
Mm-hmm.
Wars. I mean, that was back in 2022, if I recall, and it was the major event for that year. So I would say for that, yes. I would actually refer people to more of our newer events rather than our older.
Okay.
The older ones, I mean, I feel that there wasn't enough, like, and that's why we improved with the newer ones. There wasn't enough quality for. I'm always getting on myself for different
Yeah.
qualities and stuff like that. But I mean, looking at some of the older ones too, and looking at the players played. You know, I like usually if there's like a new player coming in and they see Luna, they see Meg D, they see Radish, I tell them to look back at their tournament history and watch one of those broadcasts. You know, see how they did, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and see how they were able to put that work to go ahead and get to that level. Um, if that's the main idea of someone saying, hey, I want to improve, well, look how the pros were beforehand. So you have an idea of, okay, I need to put this work in and how long it takes. It's not like an overnight thing. And a lot of pros
Yeah.
think, okay, it's going to be a 3 or 6 month endeavor, which depending on the player, it can, but it's very, very rare.
Right.
Of course, but most of these players take a lot of time to really build up themselves and consist with their gameplay. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
How about any notable sets in particular that you would?
Ooh. Luna versus Sandstorm.
Okay.
That was the main thing. I feel like I don't remember which event it was in, which I know I had it a lot of times, which is why I'm having a rough time remembering it. We had them
Yeah.
faced so many times in bracket. But I would say when Sandstorm and Boomy were the powerhouses in North America,
Mm-hmm.
and they still are. They're still one of the best teams in the world. But when they got challenged, because remember, there was years of Sandstorm and Boomy being crazy in Brawlhalla. There's no challengers to it. And then we see Luna beat Sandstorm in bracket. I remember seeing that and seeing the chat's reaction, or just seeing the community's reaction overall, and say, okay, new things are happening.
Right.
You know, and we're seeing Luna come in, starting to beat Sandstorm. Then we see some other players starting to beat Sandstorm as well. Almost Sandstorm became this gate in Brawlhalla. Say, hey, okay, here's good and here's the best.
Right.
You know, he kind of became that gate just because of how well known he was for being a pro back then.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still kind of the gate today. You know, when we see when Balloon Boy came up and when they beat Sandstorm, the community went crazy, at least in our community events over it. And Balloon Boy also beat some other players as well. It kind of, we had these almost like guardians at different levels of respect the Brawlhalla community kind of gives.
Yeah.
Based off of what pro they beat. And I like it. It's almost like like almost like a ladder almost, right? So,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
yeah.
That's a really good one. Can you talk to me a little bit more about the kind of the production side of Moose Wars, like how that has sort of evolved over time? Like how did things work when things just started, when you first started running tournaments, and like how different is that compared to today, and sort of how it evolved over time?
Yeah, so I used to run broadcasts on OBS. A lot of it was made by my designs. So I used to make the overlays. I used to do all that. And I used to make a little text file in OBS to update. Okay, here's 1, here's 2, and here's 3. You know, you would have to do it all manually. There was no transitions into it. There was no other scenes. It was just casters, gameplay, and that was it, right? And then we did that for a while. And then I was improving the OBS side a little bit. I was really obsessed with how other games were doing their production.
Mm-hmm.
So like Brawlhalla, especially back then, looking into Valorant, looking into Smash, seeing how they kind of all do things. And they kind of were using a different program than I was using for different reasons. So a lot of it was the replay format. I was able to do replays on OBS. There's a couple programs that I used, but it wasn't as smooth as it being built into the program. So we were like, okay, we have all these, we're starting to build up tech on OBS. Like I had brackets set up, I had like a program for it, I had a program for clips and replays. But I really want to move into something where it's mostly native so that I can expand on it later and just improve the quality. And then we found vMix actually through Brawlhalla. Brawlhalla recommended vMix to us, along with some of the other TOs that I found in Smash and found in Valorant. That's what they were using. So I moved over to it. It was a very bumpy 3 or 4 months. But after I got over that hurdle, we kind of moved into that. We started getting, of course, I would freelance graphics before on OBS and also on vMix. And then it kind of became, okay, I'm freelancing graphics out for people. We brought in Sandwick for a good portion of our events this year, just because he had the ability of doing a lot more than I can on my side at the moment. He's crazy with it. So now we have him doing a live production on vMix and on a different layout too. And kind of built up on there with these different graphic designs, with Sandwick doing a lot of our production for Moose Wars this year, kind of allowing us to try new ideas, right? For example, we were trying to do like an art advertisement in Pumpkin Plague. So when we were working with the charity, we also wanted to kind of advertise some of the community artwork that was going around. I saw that in Overwatch. I saw that in a couple other games, especially Overwatch, because that's a big community for art. I wanted to see how we can incorporate that a little bit more, and we tried that out during Pumpkin Plague. And it allowed, basically having a producer and having a graphic designer helps out a lot, so I can deal with the nuisances of people in bracket being a pain. So I'm kind of the guy that I have admins now, but they give me whatever major problems happen so I can deal with them, just because there's stuff that happens. A lot of people don't realize what happens in the brackets before a live stream happens. Usually it's all quiet for the player, but there's so much that happens. It's insane. But overall, the quality of our production from OBS to vMix now, a lot of it happens over the past year and a half, and that's kind of where why it's the reason today is because of our research into it, and then also just because we also have more help to do so.
Gotcha. So, do you have any particular events or any particular story of an event where something kind of went wrong, but the team was able to just kind of like pull together and save it? And
what can I not talk about? That's the main thing. So I had a series of tournaments, and this was a while back, that were most notable, where I had a wave of Brawlhalla players come in on alt accounts that were banned players. So when it comes down to Brawlhalla and banned players, for one, they don't allow them, they won't pay them out. So even if I want a banned player to play in my event, it's physically impossible because Brawlhalla won't pay them out over whatever circumstance, which makes sense. It's a banned player.
Right.
But a lot of these players decide to make strategy accounts and try to go around my avenues of detection of alt accounts, because now I have to have 5 different layers now. But when we had it, we had a wave of Brawlhalla players come in from a certain community. This was, and we've had a lot of these actually fairly recently, but not as a group, but as a player. But we had a group of players, about 5 or 10, who were really good at the game that got were temporarily suspended, or that were banned, or banned from Moose Wars, I should say, as well. And decided to come in and try to mess up the bracket. So we had them in top 32 We saw 5 different players happening. We looked into it more, and with Moose Wars, we ban based off of hard evidence. I think that's one thing that Moose Wars has done very well with is if there's hard proof of it, or there's a very high chance it's going to be a thing, we deal with it. Most community does go off of rumors, which get them in trouble. So I usually have to have a couple sources verify different things of what's going on before I do it. And this has to be happening while the bracket's still going on. So I'll have 5 different situations. I'll have 5 different people look into stuff for me as well, or I'll get information from some people to really strengthen what's going on. People playing on different people's Steam accounts, on different StartGG accounts. Also just saying threats and then going under different accounts and hopping back in the lobby, trying to play with the players. We were able to kind of minimize that to top 16. So it happened in top 32. And then I had, back then, 2 admins. I'm not going to say the names of them, just to make sure that that's all. I didn't say I was going to be cool. I don't know if they're cool with it. Sure. But I had 2 admins at the time, and we dealt with those 5 people before top 16, before it even went on to broadcast. Also winner side too. So that's probably the most notable that people have not seen. There's a lot of stuff that happens in bracket. It really is.
Yeah. Do you have a tournament that you would be particularly proud of? Like one where you think, like, man, this was a really great event, and everything kind of went off without a hitch? And
without a hitch, there's none. When it comes down to the best tournaments, I would say my Blast 2. Because for Moose Wars, it used to be all me. And it's still a lot of me. If I'm not there, there's no Moose Wars.
Right.
So with the team that I had for Pumpkin Plague and for Gobble Gauntlet, for those 2 events, those are probably my 2 best. Not because of the numbers, but just because I had a proper team backing me up. We knew what we were going to do, and we were ready for it. And it kind of showed with the quality of the events, and that's the main thing. Those were the main 2 things that I looked at a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, Moose Wars did recently celebrate like largest community tournament ever, I believe. I think by as far as like signups goes. Was that the Gobble Gauntlet?
Yeah, so we had the original record. So the original record had 1,100, and that was a Moose Wars event. But it was when Brawlhalla advertised. It was Moose Wars 19. And Brawlhalla advertised it as a $40,000 event in game. It was not meant to be that. It wasn't meant to be advertised like that. You also have to keep in mind the in-game advertisement stuff is all manually done. So for BCTI, all these people are like, hey, okay, well, why can we not submit it earlier? It's because it takes 6 weeks to get into the game, because you have to consider PCs, you got to consider Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, mobile as well now.
All that data comes in as part of like an actual game patch, right? Yeah.
So it's a lot of work for them, which is why they kind of have it. Like personally, I have a rough time with it just because I'm so used to scheduling earlier on. I'm sure she can back that up. But yeah, it's because it's in its own patch as well. So
gotcha. And then tell me a little bit about you mentioned that you've got like a good team kind of backing Moose Wars now. What's it like kind of wrangling people, like as far as like the head TO or the sort of like the manager for Moose Wars?
I kind of went into management for Moose Wars with no background. I mean, I was just a TO. I didn't know how to lead things. I went into TOing Brawlhalla to gain skill sets that I did not have. And a lot of that came from Moose Wars, and that's how I'm the person I am today. And when it came down to managing people, I was really bad at it, and it's probably one of my worst skill sets. And I'm sure different people will say that and organization are 2 of the roughest things for me. But you think, okay, well, he's running an organization. Yeah, but I'm not very good at organizing stuff, right? So a lot of it is I'm improving on a lot. That's my main thing going into 2024. I want to kind of get more management stuff done. But when it came down to my team, I mean, my guys are mostly comprised of volunteers. No, I love to pay them. I wish I had the budget to, but just physically impossible right now.
Sure.
So my guys came in. A lot of them actually came from when I used to stream. You know, I have some moderators. I met some really good people, and they stuck around and dealt with me. You know, and they helped me create the thing of what Moose Wars is. And I always say this, and I said it to my guys that were at BCX. We had a giant group photo together for the people that could be in the photo. And I'm like, look, Moose Wars is the reason. You guys are the reason why Moose Wars is the thing. I did some, but you guys backed me up where I needed you guys the most. And that's what we built Moose Wars, you know. And I have had we have a staff server in the Discord, and I've probably had, for the people that are currently still in the server, we have about 38 people in that Discord, mostly comprising of commentators, you know, but we've had about 5-star GG admins before. We've had a variety of different graphic designers, Twitch mods, etc. And I mean, these guys I love working with them. I always will. And hopefully I can make it set up properly more well enough going in 2024 that it's set up where we're able to get more sponsorships so these guys can pay. Because a lot of these positions, man, especially like commentary, I think is the only like guaranteed position outside of graphic designers and producing. Those are the remaining 3 that we pay. But it tears me up that I can't, you know, compensate these guys in other ways. So usually with my guys as well is I know they don't have to be here. You know, they're not getting paid to be here. My main thing was, and I've done it a lot in the past too, is kind of try to figure out what that person is trying to improve on. You know, what's the goal? You know, do they have a goal? If they have a goal of, okay, I want to meet more players, or I want to go ahead and I want to work on this, and this, I'll try to help them out with that while they're helping Moose Wars as well, because I have to repay them somehow. You know, there's groups that I've worked with before that are like, hey, working with Moose Wars is the best thing. And I'm like, no, yeah, but I don't like to view it like that.
Sure.
I feel like compensating them in a way where they can improve themselves from being in Moose Wars is the main thing. You know, I don't like going off a clout. I don't like using people. That's my worst fear in life, is to use people for my own advantage in general. I never want to do that. You know, this is my worst fear for it, and I don't want my guys getting screwed over. And usually if I see something going on with them and I see they're in trouble, I'll message them too. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Are you all right? How can I help you? And stuff like that too. So I kind of think that's why they stuck around a little bit, you know? But I definitely love my guys to death, and I wouldn't be here without them, and I appreciate them 100%.
That's awesome. For the people that might be interested in kind of hosting or organizing their own events, do you have any sort of words of wisdom or suggestions or recommendations you can give to people that are just getting started? Research
StarGG to death. The main thing is StarGG is the hardest thing to learn for TOing. You will not run a good event in the first few. Don't go all out for your first couple. Try it out, see how it works with a few people. Do some stream events, you know, on StarGG. That's what I would recommend. Do not get into a tournament full outright in the beginning. It is so hard to use StarGG. It took me a month to learn. 3 events where I messed up completely. When I was on Challenge moving over StarGG, it took me 5 events to be able to use it properly. And we actually stayed on Challenge for 6 months because I was scared of using the website. I had no option to but go to StarGG. So when it comes down to it, look into all the settings. It's going to be a pain in the butt. But once you understand it, then you'll be able to run events a lot better and get some help too. You know, it's not all one person thing. Did that for years, and I had many anxiety and panic attacks because of it. You don't want to go through that. So.
good recommendations.
Yeah.
So you are also pretty well known for doing a lot of the casting for your own events.
Yep.
Because I guess in the beginning, when it was kind of like all solo, it was a necessity.
Mhm.
And then now that you kind of bring casters on board, what has kind of had you sort of sticking around and doing casting yourself still? Is that just kind of like
Mhm.
a desire
S-
to be part of Moose Wars in that way still, or?
I feel like the community wants me for different parts.
Sure.
Just kind of how Photo was with official Brawlhalla stuff. They kind of wanted him top 4. A lot of my guys want to kind of see me on there, especially
Mhm.
the top players. I'll have players messaging me saying, "Hey, I want you to cast my set." A lot of
Okay.
upcoming players now want me to, and I love it. I want to, if that's a goal that they would like to have, I would like to provide that to them if they're getting those placements.
Gotcha.
Um, so in different instances, I will cast those sets if I can. Um, I primarily cast top 4. I have some amazing casters.
Hmm.
A lot of the main reasons why I'm casting so much though is because of the fact that I'll have casters and a lot of them will back out even with backups. That's just
Okay.
a caster thing. So with me, I'm a little bit more unique with Moose Wars is I can put myself in those missing blocks to fill in.
Okay.
Which is why we're able to have a set of casters consistent. But when we have casters, there's 3 blocks. Each of them are 4 to 6 sets. It's a lot of work,
Mm.
or it's some of the blocks might become 2. We might have 2 blocks instead. So we might have 6, and we might have 8. So having these guys go through this, it's rough.
Hmm.
But I would rather. But that's the main reason why I cast, though. I cast my events for those players that want me to cast. I enjoy casting. If I had the time to put in a lot of effort into casting, I would love to go ahead and cast for Brawlhalla one day.
Mm-hmm.
I just got to figure out a way where I can have the ability to do that as well. And I don't know. I like the idea. I really want to get into it. It's really difficult between TOing and my personal life anyways, because I'm
Yeah.
working 40 plus hours a week now, and I'm almost TOing 20 or 30 hours a week
Right.
working on my events. It's 70 hours and I can barely sleep anymore.
Right.
So that's kind of why I haven't fully pushed into it, but I don't know. I think the community just likes it.
Okay.
I do not view myself as a proper caster though.
Oh, okay. Really?
As well. I don't think, and this is gonna sound weird, but after researching and talking to people, I don't think any Brawlhalla caster is a proper caster. I think they're good in Brawlhalla. Outside of the main stage, they do bring some good people in.
Oh, okay.
I think a lot of it is casters, including myself, we have a rough time with play-by-play. So when you're in the middle of the game, you're having a rough time articulating what's actually going on in an easy to understand way for the viewer.
Okay.
So when you look back at some of the commentary, they bring up different things, but then they'll go off on left field and talk about something completely else and what's going on in the game, which is good to do if it's going to be for a bit,
Sure.
to a degree. But a lot of people either are really good by play-by-play and have a rough time with like articulating what they need to say during intermissions, or complete opposite. So it's my guys are starting to improve on it a little bit more too. I'm working with them a little bit to kind of understand what's going on. I'll especially be doing it in 2024 when I have like a list of, I'll be going through each of the VODs and kind of seeing how each caster is done. Because usually I'll give feedback based on the day of, which is okay. I would like, if the casters want to improve and they genuinely want it, I'll go through all the video and I'll review it and give them my point of view, even though it's not the best thing, that they could be doing. If they want it, I'll provide it to them. So.
Gotcha. So I guess then, like, it feels like then, if you had to pick between TOing and casting, you would be certainly leaning more on the TOing side.
Yeah, just because of my background in it. If I started with casting, I think I stayed with casting. If I didn't have the TOing background that I did, for one, I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Sure.
So I would never want to go to casting if I'm just TOing. I can't do both, you know.
Right.
So if I have problems with TL, let's just say it's a time thing,
Sure.
then I would go into casting, and I would love to do it. And and they still want me to cast for something like that. Brawlhalla does. I'll cast for them. I'll practice. I'll write notes for 2 weeks if they need me to.
Yeah.
Just with notice, hopefully, right? That's the big thing with stuff like that. It's either, hey, you're available now, are you ready, or
Right.
hey, okay, well, you know. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I view it. I want to make sure if I can, if someone wants me to cast for them, I don't mind doing it.
Mhm.
And the community wants it to a degree, I'll definitely do it for them. You know, do it for the great big people that want it. You know, so.
Nice. You mentioned working a full 40 in addition to like all the TOing stuff you do. What is kind of your background outside of Brawlhalla?
Outside of what? I'm sorry?
Outside of Brawlhalla.
So my background outside of Brawlhalla right now is when I was in college for cybersecurity for a bit.
Okay.
But then it just wasn't clicking. You know, I'm good at managing people in cybersecurity, but I'm really bad at coding.
Gotcha.
So that was kind of the thing. I'm like, okay, let me kind of stray away from it. And originally I decided to take a break just so that I could focus on figuring out what I want to do. Because when I went into college, I didn't really know what I wanted, you know?
Yeah.
So now, because I was figuring that out, I work just regular, you know, I work at a fast food chain right now.
Okay.
So that's my 40 hours. I don't recommend that to anyone, by the way. If you can go to college and if you can focus on your personal lives first before you go into what I did, which was focus on TOing in the meantime, it's not great. So, but that's
Gotcha.
where a lot of my focus went, was TOing and improving my skill sets there, because I was improving more there than I was in college at the time. So I went into TOing to gain skill sets, learn different things. I learned a lot, you know, but hopefully one day it'll transfer into my personal. We'll see.
Gotcha. You've kind of developed a pretty close relationship with a lot of the players, especially sort of the more recent up and coming players. I think the ones that very much kind of came up in community tournaments like Moose Wars. What has kind of that been like? Sort of like seeing these players come through your events and then go on to win their own tournaments and like majors and things like that.
I feel like the number one thing when it comes down to me TOing, the number one goal I had was to make as many positive impacts as possible on people, and provide them high quality events and so they can improve. And when I see a lot of these new upcoming players coming in, you know, I mean, I can name a couple on top of my head: Balloon Boy, Berserker, Mowgli, and stuff like that come in, Hybrid, etc., and see them improve because of a Moose Wars event, or improve because they put the work in and they showed it in my events. I don't know, it hits somewhere hard, you know. Same thing with all the other players too. I'm very hard to, when I see two different players and casters ask me to give an opinion, I really can't, because all these people came in through different Moose Wars events, or it kind of hits me in a different part, you know. I love these players to death. I mean, I know a lot of these players too before they get their placements as well. I think the only player recently that I have not was Balloon. Balloon Boy was doing good outside of that, but I knew him in Thoroughbred Mafia. Like, what I'll usually do is if I see an upcoming player, I'll try to get to know them and see how they are, and have a conversation with them to at least, right? One person didn't do that was Fakey, because I couldn't find his Discord. But but no, when it comes down to Balloon, I met him through Bred Mafia. When it came down to Hybrid and them, it was also through different communities as well. And I don't know, I'm glad to see them going crazy. I honestly feel if Balloon Boy and Hideaway went to BCX this year, it'd been a completely different game. But Balloon Boy wasn't able to go. Same thing with Hideaway. So I think North America's got some good people that could show work going into next BCX if they go and they're consistent and they keep up their placements. Right. But we're starting to see, this is off season. You know, none of the pros are practicing, so the new guys are coming in.
Mm-hmm.
This is where pros are made. It's the off season. They have that dedication. They'll go in the off season, go crazy, and then go into majors and go crazy next year. So I don't know. I mean, I love South America. I love EU, but I mean, I'm an NA lad overall.
Right.
And I love I love the EU guys. I love the South American guys as well. I love them to bits, and they are crazy. I love engaging with them, especially yous after BCX. That was fun.
Right.
But yeah, I like engaging with these players and seeing them place, and it makes me happy seeing a new player get a new high placement and then go in a group chat with their friends and say, I just got top 8. I just won an event. And I've been in many calls. The first call that I remember being in when a pro did very, very well was Stingray in 2020. When he got his second place, being in that group call meant the world to me, because it kind of let me realize this makes a huge impact on them as players, and it is just a positive impact to me. So I'm gonna stop rambling, but I love the players to death. I always will, and I'm very happy to see them succeed, and if they want help, I'll see what I can do.
Nice. That's awesome. No, I agree with you. That's kind of what it's all about, right? The whole point of running these events is giving these players an opportunity to grow and improve. So, no, that's awesome. Moose Wars has done some collaborations with other sort of like, we'll say, like organizations, particularly like INSIG and things like that, right? Is that something that we can look forward to more of kind of going forward in the future, like 2024? Any obviously you can't leak anything, but any sort of like major plans there as far as like big collaborations? Or
Not on top of my head, no. The main reason why we worked with other organizations to begin with was a Brawlhalla thing. Wasn't a Moose Wars thing. I have a rough time working with other TOs primarily because I've done it in the past, like early on.
Sure.
And I used to have to carry. It's almost like a group project, where we do something together, and they'll want the brand involved, but they don't want to put the work in.
Gotcha.
Or they don't want to put it at the level that I am, because I know how I am too, and I just have a rough time. I'm not going to run an entire event that someone else is also representing and they're not putting that work in.
Gotcha.
I just have a rough time with it. But if it's like, it depends on the situation. It's a very case-by-case thing. I would love to work with a South American group next year to provide Moose Wars to NA and to South America. I would love, my main goal for next year is I want to do an NA, EU, and South America event. I would love to do that. I don't think it's possible next year. I'm going to try hard. I want to provide events for all 3 regions in one event. If I can do that, it'd be fantastic. But maybe work with the South American group. If I was going to do EU, I'd probably do it myself. Like one day, I would love I've seen SSL, and my main goal is, if they want to, I would love to work with them for an event next year.
Gotcha.
To make an NA, EU, and South America event, so that it could go to all regions. It has some sort of translation into Portuguese, Spanish, etc. For the South American community, so they can also enjoy an NA event in their own native language, because it's all in English. Most of the South American players cannot understand English, so when you're having these guys come in, it's rough for them. So I would like to have that easy to access understandability through SSL one day. But I don't know, SSL is one of my main mentor groups. When I first started in Brawlhalla, they were the guys that helped me improve myself on broadcast. I will always appreciate them for it, no matter what they say. So,
gotcha. That's awesome. Okay. You've worked with a lot of casters as well, kind of coming through community events and stuff as they're like trying to sort of like work their way up into either improving and getting better at casting overall, or going on to maybe bigger events like Brawlhalla Majors and such, do you have any sort of like recommendations as a TO who's like regularly pulling in new talent, like recommendations for like talent that wants to get started?
Yeah, so the main thing is, if you're a caster, I need to reference something. So a lot of times casters will come to me, they'll be like, hey, can I cast? And I'm like, do you have anything I can reference? They're like, no. I'm like, I can't refer you to my Moose Wars casting, because if I don't know how you're going to cast, because what I look for in Moose Wars is I look for the style you cast and how well you do with it. So if you like to do play-by-play, that's your main focus, I need to see some reference for it. So make it, even if it's a video, most casters and other scenes, they'll make a reel of their overall casting and highlights of it. But if you can't do that, at least give me a recording that I can reference, so that I can say, hey, this, I would be interested in bringing you in for this. Outside of that, I mean, focus on play-by-play, focus on making sure you're very good there, because we can grow you in those other avenues too, just from you being in a Moose Wars event. So if you have a rough time with the intermissions, then I can see what I can do with that, because that's where I strive at. So it's just, if you're trying to get into Moose Wars casting, those are the main two. If you're trying to get casting in general, a lot of TOs don't know what to look for yet in Brawlhalla. So try to improve, look at other scenes, see, especially other fighting games primarily, as well, and kind of understand the pace it goes into. And then you can look into Valorant and stuff like that and be like, okay, what are they doing? Like, focus on a caster. Focus on one caster, see how they're doing things, how they're interacting with the other casters, how they're doing their things, learn it from them,
Right.
And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not as dedicated to become a caster in any event. So.
Gotcha. Well, we're getting pretty close to the end of our time together. Do you have any other sort of like thoughts or anything that you would like to say, sort of like if you were to just take this as a platform to communicate something to the wider community and maybe people who might not be familiar with Moose Wars, anything in particular that you would like to say to people?
Yeah, I mean, I will do events as long as I possibly can for the community, as long as they want them. That is my main goal. And as long as you guys like them and I'm physically able to do them, then I'll do them, but I feel right now Brawlhalla is very much toxic in the scene. I want to go into 2024. I want to see the community going positive, and I think we're going into that route compared to what it used to be. And I want to see the community get a lot more positive and engaging with each other in a positive route. I don't want to keep on seeing screenshots every day from people saying to me, it's like, hey, can you ban this person? I'm also not a BMG staff worker. Can we get that out of the way? Please. I don't work for BMG. I would love to. I would absolutely love to. It's one of my life goals if I could. But hey, I mean, but no, I am not a staff member for BMG at the moment. But yeah, so everyone, hopefully, as long as people like the events, I'll continue doing them. And I can't wait for 2024, because I feel like that might be a really, really good year for us. And I cannot wait to see what happens. I mean, we got SpongeBob this year. I mean,
right?
That was crazy. I'm very happy with that. I never expected that. People apparently did. I don't know how. But it's going to be a crazy 2024. Get ready for it. Practice in the off season so that you can go crazy in majors. I can't wait to see you. That's my final thoughts there.
Awesome. I'm going to have to ask you real quick, because you reminded me just now. Where did the live bleeping come from, and how did you decide to start doing that? Because that's been very, very much a mainstay of the Moose Wars experience, I think, if people have listened to you cast.
Yeah, and then I get yelled at it for it all the time. So when it comes down to bleeping, I was having a really rough time back then because I wasn't as good as I was back then at casting, and I was having a really rough time emphasizing things with my wording because I could barely speak back then. So back then I was like, okay, well then how do I emphasize different things that are happening when I'm talking? And a censor button was how I was going about it. So I'll usually be like, hey, I mean, if I'm seeing something like a pro go crazy, I'll make a bit. I'll try to make it as best of a bit that I can and say, oh my gosh, this guy's going crazy. But of course not have something in between crazy and the other word and have a beep involved with it. Because that it emphasizes that moment for the player and it gets a good clip out of it.
Gotcha.
But it started when I was a content creator. And then I brought it into TOing, and then I got yelled at for TOing. So I have to kind of keep it on the down low. But I don't know. I feel like it brings a funny emphasis on different things. I also got to remember the age group of the average Brawlhalla player.
Right.
So, but no, it's for a lot of the older guys. It makes it's a lot of fun, and hopefully I can find something else that's similar to that. It doesn't get me yelled at. And also work with the age group in the future. We'll see what happens though. It should be fun.
Oh man. It's a good time though. It's a good time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. You were easily one of the most requested guests for this season. So I'm happy that we were able to deliver a well-requested guest. So thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And whoever requested it, I love you to death.
Yeah. All right. Have a good one, dude.
All right. See you later, boss. Have a good rest of your night. See ya.
Thanks for watching this episode of Brawlhalla Origins. We'll be back next week with another episode. Join our VIP list by signing up at season2.brawlhallaorigins.com to get early access to each episode, special clips, giveaways, and behind-the-scenes updates. See you next week.